Now, Executive Suites with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi.
Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. We're taping our first show airing in May of the year. Finally, maybe going to get a little warmer weather. And very appropriately, later on in the show, we're going to talk with the local maker of surfboards. And they're a different kind of surfboard. And we're going to talk all about that. But right now, before we get there, I'm very pleased to be joined by Cowan. He is the head of Polaris MEP, which is a manufacturing extension partnership. And we're going to talk all about what that is. But of course, so much talk about manufacturing today. We thought he was a great person to have on. So Kevin, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. I appreciate it.
So let's start with that simple question. What is Polaris MEP?
MEP, so Manufacturing Extension Partnerships, it's a federal program. The U.S. Department of Commerce started it in recognition of some small manufacturers and medium manufacturing failures. So they decided to put a system in where locally, state by state, they can support small manufacturers in the area. So every state has at least one MEP program. Polaris is the one here in the state of Rhode Island.
And actually, I think we have a little map that we can bring up and show that these things, they're dotted all over the country now. You see there, you see Polaris, nice big logo you guys have up in the top right-hand corner there. So what exactly do you do with companies at Polaris?
Yeah, so it's a good question. Polaris used to be called RIMES, so it used to be the Rhode Island Manufacturing Extension Services Program.
And that had been around since like the mid-90s,
Since
right?
1996, correct. And the program was very successful. Last year, the MEP program was brought under the University of Rhode Island and rebranded into Polaris. So we've spent the last year really expanding our capabilities and improving some of the services that we offer to some of the manufacturing companies today. So historically, we've all been about lean, efficiency programs, optimization on the manufacturing floor. The National MEP program is also about bringing other services in, so business optimization, some supply chain programs, et cetera. We're bringing those capabilities here into Rhode Island now, so we spent the last year doing that. We're all about top line and bottom line growth inside of a manufacturing company. We have 5 project managers who have decades worth of experience on a manufacturing floor. So we live and breathe in manufacturing companies every day, and we help companies that may not have the ability to get services otherwise into their company and help improve.
Yeah, it sounds a little like a government-sponsored consulting firm to help companies, you know, kind of like Bain would come in for GE or something. You could come in for a manufacturer.
Yeah, that's correct. It's so federally sponsored. The typical MEP program gets federal money, state money, and then client revenues. So the manufacturing companies do pay for our services, but because of the federal and state money that typically are associated with MEP programs, those fees are small. And that's intentional so that we can go and help those programs grow, help those manufacturing companies that may not have the ability to pay those high-level consultant fees. Every other MEP program is set up that way. Historically, the RIMES and Polaris program hasn't gotten state funding, so we have a bill into the State House right now for state funding into the program, which will also help us improve our reach, improve our capabilities, help those manufacturing grows.
And you folks sent along, as we were preparing the show, some photos that I think kind of illustrate a bit of what you do, give people a tangible sense of it. Let's take a look at the first one. Here's a before picture of a manufacturer. We'll look at the after in a sec. What was wrong here, or what could have been improved that we can see in this picture?
So in this picture, this is a company that we work very closely with. This is a
Rhode Island company, right?
Rhode Island company, correct. This is a typical manufacturing floor, and you can see pallets worth of material there, machines. You can kind of see in the background what's going on in terms of further processing down the line. So very typical for a manufacturing company. When we walk into an environment like this, we see a lot of clutter, which also equals waste. And waste in a manufacturing company is money. And waste on a manufacturing floor generally represents lower margins, which hurts the company's ability to grow.
And so now let's look at the after picture and the changes that were made after Polaris came in. Here it is. Obviously it looks brighter and cleaner. I don't know if that's Photoshop or you're going good work, but it looks great. What was done here and what got fixed or what got improved?
This is right in our wheelhouse for the MEP program with lean manufacturing and 5S programs, which some people think are just mostly to clean up an environment. But it's not just about cleanliness and light and setup of the equipment, but it's more about a methodology of figuring out how to most effectively use that equipment, how to most effectively create a workflow for the material through the process. So it is a nicer looking environment, but it's all about increasing that efficiency out on the manufacturing
And
floor.
so what benefits did the company see benefits from doing that? Did they report to you?
So those kind of programs are very typically recognized with cost savings and increased sales. So one of the companies that we work very closely with is Tannery up in Lincoln. We've been engaged with Tannery for a long time.
What do they do?
They do metal plating. So they brought us in. They wanted to change some of their corporate culture. They brought us in for some lean training, really grabbed onto some of the concepts. And one of the programs that we had implemented there resulted in 25 new hires and a 35% sales increase. So those are the types of metrics that we use to measure our effectivity here in the state.
Pretty good ROI there, yeah. So part of why I wanted to have you on was because there's so much discussion about manufacturing, whether it's politicians saying we're going to bring back manufacturing, whether it's people bemoaning Rhode Island's loss of manufacturing jobs, and you are on the ground. I mean, we've seen some striking statistics. The Wall Street Journal reported a few years ago more than 1 in 3 Rhode Island manufacturing jobs was lost from 2001 to 2011. Worst rate in the country for that. But we've seen in the last couple of years, I've looked at the numbers, a stabilization there at about 40,000 to 42,000 jobs. So basically, what's the feeling in manufacturing around right now? Is there optimism? Are you seeing growth? Is it just they're hanging on by their fingernails? What do you think?
I have to tell you, I'm very optimistic about the manufacturing outlook here in the state. There's a lot of talk about innovation, a lot of talk about advanced manufacturing concepts. That means different things to different people. I've seen some very interesting advanced manufacturing concepts in place in textile companies. So historically, Rhode Island has been jewelry manufacturers and textile manufacturers. And when you think of that, when you think of textile, you think of very simple, basic textile products, which were generally lost overseas. Those jobs were lost overseas. If you take a company like Murdoch Webbing, a textile manufacturer, they have
in Central Falls, right?
In Central Falls, correct. Great progressive company, great partner of ours. They have implemented advanced manufacturing concepts like lean, like automation into their process. Their business has not just stabilized, but it's growing in an important neighborhood here in the state from a job standpoint. So, they've grown their company in very unique products, like they make strapping that catches jet fighters as they land. So not just a typical textile product, but really some advanced technologies have been able to improve their company and improve their product line. Another fantastic example is what's going on in the marine trades and the composite industry. So the marine trades have really took a hard hit in the Great Recession. There's some fantastic examples of what companies in the East Bay have done to change their business model, get into new markets, and really start introducing some composite products which are very unique and to some degree changing some industries from a transportation standpoint and a structural standpoint. So really exciting stuff going on here in the state.
All right, and we're going to talk more about them after a break. Right now we're going to take a commercial break. Stick with us though in Executive Suite. We're talking with Christian Cowan from Polaris MEP, the manufacturing extension, and later we're going to hear about the coolest surfboards you've ever seen. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi. Thank you as always for being with us. Later on in the show, we're going to hear about a local man who makes very interesting, different kind of surfboards from what you see typically. We're going to hear about his story and how he does that. Right now, though, we're talking about manufacturing much more broadly with Christian Cowan. He is the director of Polaris MEP, which is a manufacturing extension partnership, kind of like a consultancy we were saying in the first half that helps local manufacturers upgrade and compete. So I want to show actually a pie chart you folks sent along, Christian, that gives a sense of how big Rhode Island manufacturers are. This is the percentage by employees. Now that's 74%. I don't have my glasses on. I can't see. Those are small number of employees in those places, right?
Correct. So I had mentioned earlier the MEP program is a national program. Because of that, I have gotten exposure to other states and what their manufacturing demographics are like. And Rhode Island's a unique state, for sure. Roughly 1,600 manufacturers in the state. I was surprised when I heard that number. There's a lot of manufacturers here in the state of Rhode Island. 95% of those manufacturers are less than 100 employees. 74% are less than 50 employees. So you're right, this is a state of small manufacturers.
Very different from the old people's pictures of the old huge brown and sharp buildings with just tons of workers on the floor, right? We're talking small shops.
That's correct. Small and most often very technically advanced shops as well, kind of breaking new ground, introducing new products. So that demographic kind of adds some unique characteristics to the state and how those manufacturing companies are supported by the state and the business around the state.
How much is that a product of the sort of shakeout we've seen in American and especially Rhode Island manufacturing over the last couple decades, where the big shop floor, workers just putting something together on an assembly line all day went off to China and Asia, et cetera, where we kept maybe those specialties? Is that what's happening here?
Absolutely, that's a very good point. Manufacturing today is not what your father's grandfather's manufacturing was. Most of the time when you mention manufacturing to people, and we work a lot with students, their parents think of manufacturing as dirty, oily, dark, and that's not the case today, especially here in the state of Rhode Island. There's some advanced manufacturing going on in many different companies, things like and high tech from like a CNC operator standpoint. So that's not greasy mill, dirty manufacturing. That's very highly technical. It needs some trade skills. They're high-paying jobs. They're greater than $50,000 a year jobs that are in these manufacturing companies. And the fact that some of that manufacturing went overseas really forced some transformation here, in the country as well as in the state of Rhode Island, and forced companies to get a little more innovative and get some technical capabilities on the manufacturing floor.
I want to ask you on a specific term you just used, and we've used it before today: advanced manufacturing. We hear it constantly. What's the difference between that and dumb, left behind manufacturing? What makes something advanced manufacturing versus just plain old manufacturing?
Yeah, a lot of times when people hear advanced manufacturing or hear innovation, they think of robots. They think of auto manufacturing plants where robots are automatically assembling everything. That certainly is advanced manufacturing, but there are techniques, products, processes from an advanced manufacturing standpoint that are pushing forward. So it's not just about robots, it's not just about automation, but it's really about pushing the boundaries of what our capabilities are. And that's what's helping separate us here nationally from some of the manufacturing that's going on overseas, where the manufacturing floor is relatively do what they're told to do, rather than implementing some really intelligent ideas on the manufacturing floor to help utilize technology for sure, but improve processes, use some lean optimization techniques, and bring those lean concepts all the way into the office to push the business forward. So
I want to stick with this idea of advanced manufacturing. Governor Raimondo, every time I interview her, she talks about advanced manufacturing. I want to bring back advanced manufacturing, advanced manufacturing. It's not all she wants, but she's very prioritizes it highly. What do you think the governor, I'm sure you mostly support that being in the position you're in, but what needs to be done then to make that a reality, that Rhode Island grows its advanced manufacturing footprint?
So the governor's done a fantastic job of pushing that message, and everything that I've heard, seen, talked to people about, she's serious about it, and there are specific programs she's putting in place to do it. One of the connections that we're working on, we're part of the University of Rhode Island right now. One of the efforts that we're working on in conjunction with the governor's thoughts are taking some technology, not just from URI, but all the other universities in the state as well, and pushing them into manufacturing companies. So when you have a technology, either be it biotech or mechanical engineering, and it sits on a lab bench, we're working to push that technology into companies to progress it, to progress those companies' products and processes. So the initiatives that the governor is taking place is right in line with what the manufacturing businesses are asking for, and what a lot of capabilities exist in our state. We just need to make some of the connections there and provide some funding to push it forward.
A lot of business folks are pretty free market types. They don't want, I don't know if the government should be involved in any of this stuff. I mean, what's your case you make to people who wonder about why there should be any involvement, like an organization like yours? Like, well, if these manufacturers can't do it themselves, it's just sink or swim. It's too bad. You go out of business. What do you say to that?
There's something that we call the Valley of Death for manufacturing companies, and it's when you're very efficient and very profitable making a small volume of products, and as companies grow, they need technologies and they need knowledge base in order to cross that valley. so they keep profitability as their product volume grows. You have to, your manufacturing processes have to change when you're making 10 products a month versus 10,000 products a month. So there is some support that's needed to push those companies forward. Once you get to a bigger company and you have some R&D capabilities, you've got some monies there as well, it's kind of easier to make that justification of let those companies sink or swim on their own. But when you talk about the smaller companies really trying to make it and try to cross that chasm, I think the support of programs like Polaris, support of programs like the Rhode Island Manufacturers Association, the Chafee Center, Commerce RI, all of those support mechanisms are very important to help support those companies through their growth.
All right, that's all the time we have for this segment. I want to thank you, Christian Cowan, for being here from Polaris MEP. You can learn much more about them on their website. Don't go away, though. When we come back, we're going to talk about Spirare Surfboards and what makes them different from the old-fashioned chemical-filled foam surfboards. Very interesting stuff. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and very pleased to be joined now by Kevin Cunningham, a man of the ocean. Spirare Surfboards is his company. Kevin, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So before we start talking, I actually want to show a 60-second video. Before we show it, I'll just ask you to explain how it came out. It's actually sponsored by Barefoot Wines, the wines we all see in the liquor store. How did that come about?
That's right. A few years ago, I was contacted by Barefoot Wines and their production company, asked if I wanted to be involved in a documentary film about people doing positive things to help make change for ocean cleanliness and just picking up trash in an ocean environment. I was very excited. A very good director was on board. His name is Jason Baffa. He does fantastic work, a lot of surf films and a lot of good documentaries, so I was very
Well, it's beautifully shot, so we'll say thank you, Barefoot Wines, and we'll give you a look. Here is the short documentary. There's a longer version, but the 60-second documentary on Kevin Cunningham and his company. Let's take a listen.
I've always had the craftsman artist inkling in me. Just kept working with my hands, just developing the skills to take what I see in my head and actually producing it in real life. The stuff that I find on the beach isn't trash. I just see potential of how I can utilize it. What can I make out of it? Up until 60 years ago, all surfboards were wood. So I kind of came up with an idea to use the honeycomb core to make the board inherently more green because it's less material and it's still natural, sustainable wood and bamboo. I wouldn't think of myself as an environmentalist. I would think of myself more as an artist that just wants to work towards a greener, more sustainable design process. My name is Kevin Cunningham. I'm the shaper for Spirare Surfboards, and I work out of my shop here in Providence, Rhode Island.
Boy, I need that guy to shoot Executive Suite every week. It looks beautiful. It's a wonderful thing. So I want you to explain a little more. You got a hint of it there. Typical surfboards, I admit I'm not a surfer, as you can probably tell, but made out of foam, and you don't like that, and you've gone to wood. Can you just explain the rationale behind that?
The typical surfboard that you'd see in most shops, and if you had an idea of what a surfboard looks in your head, is a polyurethane foam. It's a toxic, non-biodegradable, very nasty substance, and then it's coated in fiberglass and resin, polyester resin, which is equally as bad. And both these materials are harmful to the environment and the people who make them. So years ago, I started making surfboards, and I shaped a surfboard out of the conventional polyurethane foam and polyester resin, and quickly realized this stuff is terrible. So I started developing a greener, more sustainable way to make boards, and that's how the wooden surfboards designs came about.
Wouldn't wood be too heavy?
That's the notion everyone has, that wood is heavy, wood is dull, it's not lively, but it's actually just the opposite. The boards I make out of wood, they have a recycled EPS foam core. They're actually lighter than the conventional polyurethane foam surfboards.
So we have right behind us an example.
Yes.
You made this.
Correct.
You made the surfboard. What are we looking at here? Which one is this?
This is a wood/recycled EPS surfboard. It's the Black Cat model. It has a recycled EPS core, and it's covered in poplar skins on the top and bottom, and the wood on the rails is solid Paulownia wood. This board weighs about 6 pounds.
Okay, so not too heavy then.
No.
So where did you get the idea of starting your own? I know a lot of people love surfing and they are religious about their surfing, but they don't all become surfboard makers. How
Right.
did you get the idea that I'm going to make a business out of this?
Well, it didn't start as an idea for a business. It started as I was a dedicated surfer. I was in college. I didn't have much money. I wanted more surfboards. Typically, surfers think of their surfboards like golfers think of golf clubs. You can't play 18 holes of golf with one club. So surfboards are the same way. You need one for every occasion. And I only had one. So I looked into the materials. I found out the materials not that expensive to buy. Essentially taught myself how to shape, and it slowly and organically grew into a business. The first few years, just shaping for myself, a couple friends, and slowly, surely, people start contacting me. Then once I launched the sustainable wood boards, that's when things really blew up.
How many do you make a year?
It varies, but probably about 100 a year.
Wow. So how long does it take to make one?
To make the wood board behind me takes about 10 hours, start to finish. Some of that time is waiting for glue to dry. So typically I'll have multiple boards going at once.
Okay. And what do we have looking in front of us here? You brought some other examples.
These are some of the new products I'm making now. This is using the sea resin material I developed. This is the collecting trash off the beach and turning it into useful products, giving what was discarded junk new life. These are two of the surfboard fins we make, and a new line of jewelry that we're starting to make. These are some mock-ups and prototypes of that.
So you're from Baltimore originally, came to Providence to go to RISD.
Correct.
People always think of RISD, everyone's a painter or a sculptor or something like that, but you're clearly, your design ethic brought you to a business. Is RISD, is it an entrepreneurial spirit there, do you think?
Very much so, yes. The design school at RISD is one of the best in the country, if not the world. A very entrepreneurial spirit there. A lot of people coming out of the industrial design departments, architecture departments, furniture departments, they're all very motivated to get their own business going and break new ground.
So how's business for Spirare, and what are you excited about going forward?
Business is good. Busy making surfboards, really excited about the new products with the sea resin. Just looking forward to keep going and hopefully grow a little bit over the next couple of years.
So we only have about 30 seconds left. I have to ask, what's the best place to surf in Rhode Island in your opinion?
Oh, I can't tell you that.
Oh, yeah, you can't let the other people. That might be the best answer of all. How often do you get out to surf? Do you get sick of it now because you're constantly making surfboards? No?
Just the opposite. Every time I make a board for a new customer, I immediately want to make one for myself.
Nice. So yeah, how much, I have to ask too, how much do they cost?
These wood boards, like the one behind me, they start around $1,100.
$1,100. I'm sure people willing to pay for a good surfboard.
Of course, it lasts 10 times longer than your traditional foam and fiberglass surfboard, so it pays for itself over time.
Fascinating. All right, well, with the dawn of summer, I'm sure we'll see people out there with Spirare surfboards here in Rhode Island. Thank you, Kevin, for being here.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more about this, it's Spirare, S-P-I-R-A-R-E. Plug it into Google. You can find his website. It's gotten all sorts of national attention, so we'll be keeping an eye on it. And surf's up for all of you who are going to buy one, apparently, right? Don't forget to tune in again next week for Executive Suite. You can also catch every episode on WPRI.com and on the radio Sunday night on WPRO. See you next week.